Hi, my name is Laurelyn Claybrook,
My name is Rick Claybrook.
and my husband Rick and I founded the Claybrook Fund.
I wanted to be a lawyer because I was a history major in college and I didn't want to be a history prof. And so I thought perhaps I would go to law school.
He did not know that he was a natural-born lawyer, but I did. I recognized it because my dad was one.
I was encouraged to do that by other folks, including professors and my wife's father, who was a lawyer as well.
He went to law school, and then when we moved into this area, he went into an area of the law that he knew was going to be very time-consuming, and we were very determined that our children would have at least one parent at home. And so I felt very strongly that I wanted to be home with our kids, especially since I had a degree in education and everything else, and I've never regretted that decision.
That seemed like the right thing to do, and I think it was.
Rick and I were both from a very similar background.
We like being able to give. Obviously, it shows that we've been blessed with more than we need.
Our church is taught that giving was a joy.
It's part of our obligation to help others who are not so fortunate or who are doing good work with others who are not so fortunate.
Not a responsibility, but a complete joy.
It's a privilege and also an obligation.
Because we were getting to bless people as God had blessed us.
But it's not an onerous obligation. It's one that you get great joy from being able to help people.
Rick, every lawyer talks about the big case, and Rick finally had one that took 14 years, but when the settlement came, it was a large one, and we were faced with, what do we do?
I mean, one of the reasons we set up the Donor Advised Fund was because as I retired from my big firm, naturally I expected my income level to go down, but I wanted to set up a fund so that we could continue to support ministries that we'd supported all during our life together, our married life together. We'd
always had giving in our budget. We'd always planned for it.
Now, we have got some very regular giving patterns that make it easy over time to keep giving at the same amounts. It's great. United Charitable, you can just set it up to give automatically to that. Don't even have to worry about it once you get it set up.
You no longer have to figure out, okay, where is the money for this going to come from?
In a sense, the hard part's already been taken care of. We've obviously already given this money.
It's already been put aside, but every person who is at United Charitable has already made the decision that they want to support things. They've set aside money. They can't get it back.
Now it's a question of where should we give it?
They can't change their mind. It's been set aside to do good things for people.
How are we going to draw down this fund? And we have drawn down this fund significantly over the first 5 years or so that we've had it. But it's been very pleasurable in doing so.
But that has been the most fun, to just hear about a need or have a grandchild call you and talk about a need, or a daughter, or just to hear about a need and think, I could fix that. I could do that.
It's great just to have it there. Say, oh, I can do this. I really don't have to worry about, is this going to take any food off of my table this week? It's not. It's already gone. So now it really is a question of, let's get it out there working for us. One of the projects we took on at our church.
Okay, number one, the old pews were miserable. Absolutely miserable.
Our pews were starting to break. Our carpet was stained. The lighting was bad.
The new pews are very comfortable. We spent a little extra to have the padding and so forth. But when you come into a place to worship, or when you come to gather together, the setting does make a difference.
But we now have new lighting, we have a new stage area, we have new pews, we have new chairs, we have new carpet. These are things which, I bring this up because this was something that we saw. Nobody brought it to us and said, would you please do it? We were able to take the initiative and make it happen. That makes us feel great as well. And it makes us feel good that people don't know that we did it. A few obviously do, but that it's kind of closely held. We didn't do it to get people to pat us on the back, and that's important to us. Well, you get the family involved because they're one of the ways that you see that you can help. And so we can visit with them often. They're both very involved in band, and so we come to a lot of concerts, and when we see particular needs for the band program, for instance, then we can jump in and help a little bit.
I have seen, probably the best example I can give is back when Herndon High School was going to Normandy.
We had, our band was invited to go to Normandy a couple of years ago, and that is an enormous feat.
To talk about Normandy, I could go on, and you don't really need to hear it all. It was a highly emotional time for everybody.
And we were able to give all of our band students the opportunity to go to Normandy to participate in a once-in-a-lifetime event, to walk through the streets of Normandy, playing their instruments, honoring the USS Herndon, the men from the USS Herndon. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We would never have been able to do without private donations.
It was a highly emotional time for those of us whose parents were part of the Greatest Generation. It was a highly emotional time to see these kids. What makes history real is to touch it, to see it, to understand it. And I think that the kids in the Herndon High School band were all amazingly impacted by that trip, to see the honor that the French people still paid, to have people actually come up, older people, most little, some of them had been children still, or their parents had been there, and to have them they thanked our grandson. He had a picture of his grandfather and his stuff, and he said, I am so glad your grandfather was safe, that he went home, and that he lived a rich and full life. But he came to set us free, and he had no reason to, but that he loved freedom and was willing to sacrifice.
I saw our band director realize that there were other people in the community, sorry, I'm a little teary, who viewed her students as being just as precious as she did.
My grandparents gave money to help kids who couldn't afford the trip overseas.
My parents had given a big hunk in the beginning, and then near the end contacted her and said, what do you need for the final kids that are right on that line, that free or reduced line, because trips can't be free.
And they actually gave a little bit of extra money, and my band director was like, oh, you don't need to give that much. And they were like, no, it's okay, just in case something comes up.
What do you need? And she said, there are kids that would total about $4,200. And my parents said, here's $5,000.
Kathleen Jacoby told us especially about one student who came in and said, I just can't go. And she said, oh, actually, yes, you can.
And the day Kathleen received the check, a student came in, and she was like to the penny short what the excess was that my parents sent. And Kathleen said, that kid just knew that somebody who she doesn't even know loved her enough to anticipate a possible need, and she was able to go.
So this one kid was able to go to France to celebrate the 75th commemoration of Normandy because of the gift my grandparents gave, which made me really happy that they were able to help that kid.
When it came down to the end of the day, the kids had done a bunch of fundraising themselves. There were several kids in the band who wanted to go on this very worthwhile trip, but they had not been able to raise enough, and their parents were not able to give them the money to go. And so we basically were able to provide scholarship assistance for these 2 or 3 kids. And I don't know why, but that meant more to me than the earlier gifts that we'd given that helped the whole band go. But just the thought that nobody's going to be left behind was a good feeling for me.
We've been so privileged to have this fund where it isn't a try and sit down and jigger the numbers. It's there.
When people give to our school, it lessens that stress. It means we can provide more. We don't have to pick and choose, we can provide more.
The entire group matters, not just those who can afford it.
You're not doing it so that people will praise you. You're doing it because you recognize that they are the Lord's creations as well. That they're part of a common family.
For our students, it was a unifying opportunity that brought them closer together.
And you want to help them when they're in need, with the hope, of course, that if you're ever in need, they will help you, but we're all in this together.
We are all in this together, and people that make a different amount of money than you aren't fundamentally different than you, they just have less change in their pocket.
There's lessons that you learn when you see other parts of the world, how other people live and how other cultures operate that you can't get by reading in a textbook. So I think it's just priceless what we were able to do for them.
Both Rick and I have been committed Christians for our whole lives.
Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what your right is doing when you're giving.
We have been very blessed by God, and we feel very strongly that we are to bless others.
At the end of the day, you hope people will look back at you, your kids and your grandkids, and say, they were generous to us. They loved us. They showed their generosity, their love through their generosity. And you can't do that just by letting it sit there in the fund. You have to start giving it away to other folks.
God loves a cheerful giver. We have a lot of fun.